Number 5 on this list is a super weapon. One thing that's widely believed about Area 51 is that for a while it was used as a place to develop and test nuclear weapons. Located out in the middle of the desert, very secluded, it made for the perfect spot to develop such deadly weapons. As time went on and the Cold War quieted down, there was less of an emphasis on manufacturing such bombs. In fact, dismantling these bombs has been something that's been going on for quite some time in an effort to make sure we avoid nuclear annihilation of the entire planet. This is all well and good and probably the best thing for all of us. But some believe that this site is kept so secret because there's another type of weapon at play. Nobody knows exactly what it could be, but some people speculate that the United States government specifically uses this site as a place to develop a super weapon. Something that the world would have never seen before. Whether this weapon would take the place of a bomb or a gun or a pathogen is currently unknown, but it would dwarf the atomic bomb in deadliness for sure. Dismantling all atomic bombs looks really good in the tabloids. Making a massive super weapon that could destroy entire countries doesn't look nearly as good. This is why the government has made it their mission to keep it all under wraps. Also, if word got out that the government was trying to make some sort of super weapon, well, it doesn't matter what the actual intentions behind the weapon are, other countries would interpret that as very threatening. They would then either need to build their own super weapon or try to stop America from ever completing the construction of theirs. Both of these scenarios would be very bad for humanity and is definitely something that the American government would want to avoid. I have no idea what this super weapon could be or what it could entail, but if America was making something like this, you have to imagine that Area 51 would be the spot for it. Number 4 on this list is the moon landing. With the Cold War at its height and the space race in full swing, the United States in 1969 made the first successful moon landing in human history. Or at least, that's what they wanted us to think. Ever since the moon landing took place, conspiracy theories of its validity have run rampant. Many people believe that the Americans never really landed on the moon in 1969, but just faked the whole thing to get a leg up in the Cold War. Most people believe that Area 51 was the site where they filmed the whole thing. Area 51 is a massive space that's super closed off to the public. This would be the perfect location to film something like the moon landing if you ever were to do such a thing. You wouldn't want to draw attention to a set like this, so renting out a studio in LA probably wouldn't have been the best idea. If this is true, then it also begs the question, how many other things have been doctored here? Does the United States regularly film stuff here that isn't real and then release that to the public? Unless somebody comes out from the film crew that made this fake video, sadly, we probably won't ever know. Number 3 on this list is Mutant Experiments. Aliens are obviously the first thing that we think about when it comes to Area 51, but maybe there are some other strange creatures that are hiding at this base. If you've ever seen the show Stranger Things or are regular on videos like this, then I imagine you've probably heard of the project MK Ultra. If you haven't, then this was an illegal project conducted by the CIA starting in the 50s to try and wield the power of mind control. Through a series of horrible experiments, the CIA would take people, often give them large amounts of hallucinogens, and then subject them to forms of psychological torture. Lots of the people that took part in these experiments were horribly scarred for life, and most of them never recovered. This whole process broke so many human rights violations and really was not a good look for the American government. They eventually stopped in the 70s, and when this info was finally released to the public, faced some pretty bad backlash because of it. Experiments of this nature may not be happening anymore, but many have speculated that something similar could very easily be going on at Area 51. In 2018, new documents were released about MK Ultra, and it showed that the CIA had 6 dogs run, then stop, then all turn around and run back, all from implanting brain chips in them. Is it possible that something similar is going on here, where maybe they're making some mutant controllable animal? What about experiments involving humans that the government doesn't want reaching the public? If they've done it before, then there's no reason to think that they aren't capable of doing it now. Maybe these experiments don't involve mind control, but potentially taking some characteristics of an animal and putting them into a human. We've seen over the past decades a growing interest in mutant animals, so there's no reason to think that one bright scientist wouldn't want to try this with people as well. We obviously don't know for sure, but a secluded, secretive base in the desert is pretty much the perfect spot to perform mutant experiments if you ever were to do such a thing. Number 2 on on this list is the Roswell Incident. According to Wikipedia, the Roswell Incident is the 1947 recovery of balloon debris from a ranch near Corona, New Mexico by United States Army Air Forces officers from Roswell Army Airfield, and the conspiracy theories decades later claiming that the debris involved a flying saucer and that the truth had been covered up by the United States government. Well, many people believe that this apparent flying saucer is currently residing in Area 51. This is what you've heard about Area 51 for. This is where it's got its big name: alien tech. This site is used as a secret base to investigate alien technology. This alien tech is getting regularly tested and experimented with by the government at this site. Some believe that America got these UFOs, brought them to this site, and now are trying to reconstruct them and use that technology to build their own advanced spacecraft. Whether the spaceships that they're in possession of have advanced weaponry on them, that's unknown. But one has to imagine that they would contribute to warfare in some capacity. One also has to imagine that if America got access to flying saucers in 1947, that they've probably succeeded by now in their attempts at remanufacturing said flying saucers. Who knows what sort of crazy otherworldly tech is being stored in Area 51 that is super top secret? How much does the government actually know about extraterrestrial life that they aren't telling you? I can't say for sure, but I'd hedge my bets that the answers are in that base. Number 1 on this list is aliens. We just talked about how they probably have alien tech chilling at Area 51. Well, how about the actual extraterrestrials who made that tech? Many people believe that Area 51 is not only a spot for testing alien equipment, but also a holding spot for any aliens that the government has come into contact with. It's very likely that these aliens are already dead, but I also don't see why it wouldn't be possible for them to potentially have some of these aliens alive and just locked up. Having alien life locked up in a very secret base is something that you wouldn't want getting out to the public, but it isn't just humans you'd need to worry about. If this is true, and this info was confirmed and then leaked to the public, well, I can only imagine the species of alien that our prisoner belongs to would want to get their friend back. If they were intelligent enough to get to this planet with supposed advanced technology, then we can only assume that they're a superior being to us. Having a superior being pissed off with the entirety of the human race probably isn't the best idea and something that should be avoided at all costs. Also, even if this alien's friends didn't care and just left their buddy behind, well, the panic and chaos that this would cause in the world would be insane. One would have to assume that other countries would be demanding to investigate the alien for themselves, that the global public would want answers and would be irate if we didn't get them, that people would start to lose their minds worrying about the possibility of aliens attacking the planet. It makes perfect sense why the American government wouldn't want people to know about such a thing. And honestly, when I think about it more, maybe ignorance truly is bliss when it comes to Area 51.
Number 5. Getting in is impossible. Area 51 didn't get a reputation as one of the most secretive places in America because it was easy to get into. And there's a reason our best idea for getting a peek inside was to just swarm the place en masse and hope that there'd be too many of us to stop. The thing is, they saw that coming. Mostly because we broadcasted it and made Facebook groups about it and it was a big meme, but as well, the entire surrounding area around Area 51 is completely surveyed. Armed soldiers patrol the perimeter at all times, and they watch the airspace up above, so no dropping in Fortnite style either. Up until 2018, you couldn't even get a good look at it from satellite imagery since it was censored on Google Earth. Now, some conspiracists say there's cameras hidden in the surrounding countryside in the rocks, and I honestly believe that. They keep an eye on everything that goes on the main road. You want to know how seriously they take security at Area 51? Those employed at Area 51 fly in from McCarran International, as there's no commuter traffic allowed. I'm guessing all the parking spaces are taken up by UFO parking. Employees fly in from a secret airline called Janet Airlines, an acronym which, funnily enough, stands for just another non-existent terminal. Janet may be America's most secretive airline. Anyone working it needs top-level clearance. That's everybody working it. Even the flight attendants need to be cleared for top-level clearance. Just in case they overhear a man in black suits talking about the Type 25 plasma pistol they recovered off the crash site of the Kig-Yar Scout they found just outside of Roswell, they know not to report that to anybody. Now, no word on whether or not Janet Airlines contributes to air miles, but I have to imagine their frequent flyer reward program is pretty impressive.
Number 4, employees are paid in cash. In 2010, some of the secrets about Area 51 were declassified, and former employees were able to talk about their time at the secretive military base. One of these former employees, a 72-year-old named James Nose, gave an interview about his time at Area 51 to the Seattle Times. James claimed not to have seen any UFOs or aliens, but hey, maybe that just wasn't declassified material he could talk about. The interview contains some interesting anecdotes about some US government covert ops, but what I find most interesting about the interview is his claim that several of the employees were paid in cash. He would be paid in cash, and as a result, there was no paperwork connecting him to Area 51, which is probably why my landlord also insists on being paid in cash. Other employees claimed that when they were paid by check, the checks would be from unrelated non-government companies such as Pan American. So although we don't know for sure what is being done at Area 51, we know that it is so secretive that they don't even want a record of who has worked for them.
Number 3, they're expanding. The most secret building in the world is getting bigger, slowly but surely each year, and no one on the outside knows why. And they're doing it the way they do everything, which is to say clandestinely and not telling nobody nothing. They've been expanding the area surrounding the base, buying up swaths of land to assimilate inside of it. From what can be observed, new hangars and new runways are being built, but again, it's impossible to ascertain what for because everything revolving around this building is top level clearance, so we only have wild mass guessing to go on. Obviously they're building more hangars because they're collecting more UFOs. I mean, what else could it really be? I'm a guy on a YouTube channel, I'm a trusted news source. They hit a bed of a snag in 2015 when the mass of land they were swallowing up was owned by a family who'd held the land for the past century. They refused their offers to give it up, and the Air Force offered the family $5.9 million. But the family wanted to hold out for more as they felt it wasn't a good enough offer. And honestly, it's the US Air Force. We know they've got the money. Spring a little for it. It's not the first time the secretive base has grown. When it was first established in 1955, it was a little over 6 by 10 miles. But these days, the base has become so large, it's now 4,500 square miles across. Area 51 is getting big enough to be its own state. It's bigger than Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Delaware, the 3 best states. I can't tell you what they're doing or what they need all that space for, but it does keep me awake wondering.
Number 2, there is a presidential declaration exempting them from turning over classified materials. In the United States, an organization can be forced to disclose classified information for a variety of reasons. As an example, if the Environmental Protection Agency believes that an organization is disposing of toxic waste in a way that goes against local hazardous laws, they can order that organization to turn over relevant materials, classified or not, in order to aid in the EPA's investigation. On September 29, 1995, President Bill Clinton signed a presidential determination exempting Area 51 from these laws. As Clinton stated in his determination, "I find that it is in the paramount interest of the United States to exempt the United States Air Force's operating location near Groom Lake, Nevada, from any applicable requirement for the disclosure to unauthorized persons of classified information concerning that operating location. Therefore, pursuant to 42 U.S.C., I hereby exempt the Air Force's operating location near Groom Lake, Nevada from any federal, state, interstate, or local provision respecting control and abatement of solid waste or hazardous waste disposal that would require the disclosure of classified information concerning that operating location to any unauthorized person." This determination has to be renewed by the president every year, and we know for a fact that the next president, George W. Bush, chose to uphold and renew it, making this a rare example of bipartisanship.
They cover up a lot. Now look, this whole video we've been talking about everything they cover up, but it goes so much deeper than you know. You might think working at Area 51 would be your way into learning all the secrets the base has to offer. Pick up a broom, sweep something up, learn about the aliens. But you might be saddened to know even those with top-level clearance are still kept in the dark on just about everything. In the 90s, there was a bit of a controversy when several lower-level Area 51 workers tried to file a suit against Area 51. Because exposure to the black site's hazardous materials was making them sick. Apparently, the base would have stacks of discarded equipment, scraps, and hazardous waste left around in open trenches the size of football fields, and then to dispose of them, workers would cover them in jet fuel and light it on fire, leading to toxic smoke blowing all throughout the base. Definitely sounds very safe. This smog was affectionately nicknamed London fog by the workers in between bouts of coughing fits. Several workers came down with skin conditions or respiratory conditions from their time working the black site. But where things get curious is that they don't even know what was being burned around them. And when the workers tried to file their lawsuit, the base refused to clarify or even acknowledge what had been burned. In fact, the government outright refused to even acknowledge the name of the base, as up until 2013, they still pretended the thing didn't exist at all and were very careful in all official documentation to avoid saying the name of it ever. Did you know it wasn't even until 2013 that the base was ever officially acknowledged by a president? It was President Obama, and he was doing so in a bit of a jokey manner too. The government only acknowledged the workers after their lawyer had provided them with satellite photos of the base acquired from a dubious source. Whatever was being burned there was pretty serious stuff. I mean, we can only speculate. Plasma recovered from a Type 52 troop carrier? Ectoplasm? Unobtainium? We may never know. And that's what makes me want to know.
Coming in at number 5, we have Area 51, a classic birthplace of conspiracies about aliens and UFOs, but do you know what actually goes on inside those highly secured walls? Located 120 miles northwest of Las Vegas, the base is a government-controlled piece of land. The ground space of Area 51 is so big that it's around the size of Connecticut. Surrounding the base, there is very little around it, far from modern living styles and even lacks cell reception. And this is by design, as in 1954 the CIA was asked by the president to find a secret location and found what they were looking for here. Civilians are prohibited to enter the grounds of Area 51, with threats of a fine and imprisonment if civilians trespass or take photos of the building. In 2013, the CIA approved the release of declassified documents about the history of the site. This was the first time the US government acknowledged the existence of Area 51. Even though it has been in operation since 1955. Area 51 is shrouded in mystery. According to ex-government sources, this mysterious area of Nevada is mostly a test site for experimental military technology, like the SR-71 Blackbird airplane, and now a secret extraterrestrial testing facility. Additionally, Area 51 is home to the nation's overhead surveillance program. It's where some of the most important spying aircraft in American history was assembled, tested, and ultimately sent out on missions. Experts say it's likely remains an area for the Air Force and US spy agencies to develop the next generation of aircraft and other weapons of war. The conspiracies around Area 51 in relation to examining aliens are due to the multiple reports of reported UFOs around the grounds of Area 51. Though these weren't UFOs, they were the aircrafts the government was testing on the grounds. That being said, since it has forever been locked away from the public, it's not for certain exactly what goes on within the walls of Area 51. But the fact that it was declassified 60 years after it began operations is a bit scary if you ask me. In at number 4 we have John Lennon's CIA case. John Lennon is a pop culture icon and is best known for being one of the members of the Beatles, though the Federal Bureau of Investigation considered Lennon a threat. This is because the government wasn't too keen on a foreigner spreading anti-war, anti-Nixon messages to the rather large counterculture movement in the United States. Thus, the FBI did what the FBI does best and kept detailed surveillance records of Lennon's activities while actively trying to deport him. The FBI suspected Lennon would disrupt proceedings in the 1972 presidential election, where Nixon hoped to be re-elected, with a planned tour complete with voter registration efforts and anti-war protests. To help stop him, the Immigration and Nationalization Service, which would later be absorbed into the Department of Homeland Security, began deportation proceedings against Lennon. It appears that their preemptive efforts worked. Lennon never did the tour and Nixon was re-elected. It took 14 years for the FBI to release their files on John Lennon. Historian John Wiener spent those years fighting to gain access to the FBI's secret files on John Lennon. At first, the FBI refused to release many of the documents, saying their release would endanger national security. Wiener's Freedom of Information case went all the way to the Supreme Court before the FBI agreed to settle. In those files, it seems that their biggest concern was Lennon's association with radical anti-war activities, and his ability to influence voters to vote against the Nixon administration in the coming election. Therefore, the CIA led to the conclusion that his visa should be terminated in the interest of national security. John didn't go down without a fight though and fought this claim with lawyers. When that didn't work, the CIA tried to deport Lennon, this time by catching him for narcotics, even though the FBI doesn't enforce possession of narcotics charges as it is a state offense. That being said, the CIA proceeded to give the Miami FBI office a discreet porter to arrange a drug bust. However, all of Lennon's files were destroyed due to what they claimed to be part of a routine file destruction procedure, so this can't be known for certain. Coming in at number 3, we have the Bohemian Club. The Bohemian Club is an elite invitation-only social club founded in San Francisco in 1872. The Bohemian Club began renting the campground for an annual retreat before purchasing it outright in 1899. But what actually happens at the club? Well, in June and July, some of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the country flock to the Redwood Grove in Sonoma County, California. They're all members of this so-called Bohemian Club, a private all-male club that's counted US presidents, military officials, artists, and business leaders as members. Over the years, a number of those gathered club members have happened to be US presidents. Because of its secrecy, strange ceremonies, and elite body of members, the Bohemian Club has long been the subject of sinister online rumors, with a number of journalists trying to infiltrate the campground just to try and get a glimpse of what actually goes on in the camp. The journalist Alex Shumatov was caught and detained for trespassing. Filmmaker Alex Jones had more success with his infiltration in 2000, where he entered the camp with a hidden camera. Jones was able to capture a ceremony called the Cremation of the Care. During this ceremony, members were seen wearing costumes and cremating a coffin before a 40-foot owl. While the reported Philip Weiss snuck into the Bohemian Grove in 1987 and spent a few days mingling with the rich and powerful. A former dining server described the club as a place where the elite could engage in behavior that doesn't usually fly for people of their stature in the regular world. In the 21st century, the Bohemian Club maintained its reputation for being highly exclusive, with a predominantly Caucasian membership composed of the richest and often most politically conservative men in the United States. Coming in at number 2, we have Walt Disney working for the FBI. Who would have thought that the founder of Mickey Mouse and the Disney Empire served as an FBI informant? From 1940 until his death in 1966, Walt Disney secretly served in the FBI. Walt Disney served as a secret informer for the Los Angeles office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. According to documents that have come to light about this secret arrangement, Disney was tasked with reporting on the activities of Hollywood actors, writers, producers, directors, technicians, and union activists suspected of political subversion. At this time, communism was on the rise around the world, and American officials were concerned about these ideals spreading into society. The documents report that during a strike of animators at the Disney studio in 1941, Walt Disney publicly accused the strike leaders of communistic agitation. When Disney, whose right-wing leanings were well known, testified before the House of Committee on Un-American Activities in Washington, he named several of the animators who had led the strike as communists. In return for Disney's information, the director of the bureau allowed Disney to film in the FBI headquarters in Washington. For his part, Disney allowed the director access to Disney scripts and make changes in movies and episodes of the Mickey Mouse Club television show. Due to Disney providing the bureau with information and doing such a good job, he was named Full Special Agent in Charge Contact in 1954. This title was given to those who were trusted informers that is able to provide transportation and equipment, as well as public relations services to the bureau. And finally, in at number 1, we have they investigated ESPs. The extrasensory perception, also known as ESP, is considered a sixth sense, including claimed reception of information not gained through the recognized physical senses but sensed with the mind. According to the FBI Vault, ESP is considered a perception of information about events beyond what may be discerned through the 5 physical senses or deduced from past experience or knowledge. The FBI's interest in ESP goes back to 1957, when the bureau was contacted by a man called Foose, who claimed that he could teach the blind to see. While CIA was not impressed by the tricks of Foose, views, it wouldn't be the end of the agency's or the FBI's interest in psychic and paranormal phenomena. From there, the FBI once spent time and money investigating extrasensory perception. There has also been reports of experimenting with ways to weaponize people with ESP. This was a highly secret program during the 1970s by the government that took place in research labs in California. The Bureau attempted to look at the phenomenon from a rational and logical viewpoint, using cold hard science and math much like the CIA and DIA later would. In their attempt to construct a laboratory test to objectively measure psychic phenomena, the results of the laboratory tests that they held remain unknown, as the files were excluded from the FBI's release. Considering the interest of the Army and CIA in the FBI's psychic research, whatever their results were likely helped justify the future course of the intelligence community's research into psychic perception. Based on concerns ESP could be used as part of an international spying, the FBI spent more than 3 years looking into the phenomenon before they concluded there was no scientific support for their concerns.